so many people are afraid of being called a racist.
Right.
And so to try and accommodate the left, decent people are willing to vote how they're told, or put the bumper sticker on their car, or post the black tile, because it's almost like this cultural extortion. Do anything to me except call me a racist. And because of that, the left has realized that they can implement what previously would have been an economic class war as now almost a power struggle on the country. This is rooted in critical race theory, which you've talked about. Candace, can you really dive into this of what they're teaching our children, how they're actually instructing bigotry to the next generation? There's an amazing video from Loudoun Public Schools. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it was a white teacher on a Zoom call with a black student. You saw this?
I covered this on my episode of Candace Today.
Tell us what it is.
Yeah, you know, so there's so much talk about the education system, and it feels really good to be in front of people that are actually seeing this real time. And I guess first and foremost to let you know, everything that you're seeing didn't exist 10 years ago. And it's radically changed the education system, the American education system, and what they're focusing on, this hyper focusing on what's really just psychological conditioning, right? They're trying to brainwash students and psychologically condition them and not actually teach them hard academics that are going to be helpful in life. So I actually talked about that in my monologue earlier today, which was just, these are all facts, but America right now has never given out more degrees, and yet the students are dumber than they've ever been. So SAT scores, and that's not an opinion, that's a fact. SAT scores, standardized tests show that this is the dumbest generation. We're producing the dumbest students that have ever lived in America, and yet they've got more degrees, right? So if you actually look, so right now I've been doing a lot of studying over the last year, and I'm actually enrolled in a course right now that's on Zoom, and it's a literary theory course. Technically, it's English. It's an English course. And in this literary theory course, I was so shocked when a requirement was that we all have to list our pronouns. This didn't happen 10 years ago when I was in school. And in my class, I have 3 people who's identify as they, them. You would think in an English class, they would tell you that you can't call one person a plural pronoun, right? You could be, hey, actually, that's not proper English. This should be offensive to anybody teaching English that they have to call one of their students they, them. But they don't care because they're not after actually teaching you that this is actually wrong and problematic because they want to make sure you feel good. So Thomas Sowell has a wonderful book. I know you guys hear me talk about him all the time because I think I've read every Thomas Sowell book. But he has a wonderful book called Inside the American Education System, and I recommend that every person reads it to understand how professors are actually, right now, they just want students to feel good and know nothing. So there was a child, I mean, he gives you a ton of examples, but one that was particularly hilarious to me is there was a child, a reporter spent months in a Los Angeles high school, and they found the kid, 17 years old, who was the smartest kid in the class, and they asked him what he learned that year in his history class, and he said that he learned that the Vietnam War was fought between North Korea and South Korea. Kid you not. Until Eisenhower signed a deal completely. I mean, just the idea that he even thought up that the Vietnam War was between North Korea and South Korea, tricky. But then the reporter asked him, well, would it bother you to know that what you learned, that you're wrong? And the kid answered back, and he said, no, because I learned in Mrs. Hill's class, I don't know if her name was actually Mrs. Hill, but I learned in Mrs. Hill's class that it doesn't really matter what you know, it really matters how you feel. And they made a really good time. I've had a really good semester, and she's our favorite teacher because she made us realize the importance of how we feel. And I think that is so emblematic to the times that we live. Like, you have an English teacher that's more concerned with how these children feel than saying, but actually this isn't proper English. And for some of the teachers I feel bad for because they're also under siege, right? So the Georgetown professor who you're bringing up who just got fired for accurately saying in a Zoom call that every time she looks at the students that are at the bottom of her class, they all happen to be black. Well, we should be able to talk about that. We should be able to have an open discussion and say, why are black students failing more than their white counterparts? And maybe it's because we're putting in place laws like they have in California, rules that you can't fail black students because they're late, that punctuality is a form of white supremacy. We have a culture issue that's problematic. We know when we talk about Cardi B, Little Nas X, and the Satan shoes, there are tons of reasons that we could talk about that perhaps black Americans culturally, with the highest single motherhood rate in the nation, are not doing as well as their white peers, but instead we call that professor who brought up a fact racist. We fire her as they did, and the conversation gets swept under the rug.